Business leaders are calling on Andy Burnham to reverse Brexit and put Britain on a path back to the EU, should he become the next Prime Minister. Burnham claimed victory in Thursday's Makerfield by-election and is widely considered the front-runner to replace Sir Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. And now, new research could pile further pressure on Burnham over Brexit. A new study compiled by campaign group Best for Britain and carried out by Frontier Economics suggests that rejoining the EU could boost the economy by at least £92 billion. That's a growth boost of at least 3.6% over the next 5 to 10 years. To put that in context, every trade deal the UK has struck since Brexit.
Well, there you go. This is GB News Originals. I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And do leave a comment. Let me know what you think.
It could, combined, add around £15 billion to GDP. Rejoining the EU could add at least 6 times that, according to the study. The report also claims that the gains would be felt most strongly in the North, the Midlands and the industrial heartlands, the exact communities Burnham built his name representing. But here's the tension. Burnham said last September that he would like to see the UK rejoin the EU within his lifetime. But during the by-election campaign, he promised not to rerun the Brexit arguments. Wes Streeting, who's being talked up as Burnham's Chancellor, has gone further, calling Brexit a catastrophic mistake and saying the UK should one day rejoin. With the 10th anniversary of the Brexit referendum on Tuesday, that debate isn't going to go away.
Well, I mean, Starmer's a threat to Brexit. The whole Labour government's a threat to Brexit. They've never, ever accepted it. They fought against the will of the people. They're realigning us with various parts of the European project, taking away our choices in a number of areas. And Burnham could possibly take that further. I don't know. Although I suspect he'll be in so much political trouble on everything else, because number one, of his own flip-floppery. I mean, he makes Starmer look resolute. It's remarkable. And secondly, because he'll be a hostage of the backbenchers. And the backbenchers want to go further and further left. And I thought the Pat McFadden comment that came out in the Mandelson files said everything. You know, our backbenchers just want to tax everybody and give it to people on benefits. So I think his attempted reset and pushing us closer to the European Union will be delayed by other problems, not least of which, this is the man that said, I don't know why we worry about the bond markets. Well, as Warren Buffett once said, you may not worry about the bond markets, but they'll worry about you.
If you could ask Andy Burnham for one thing as the new Prime Minister, what would you ask?
Ooh, how are you going to improve the country because it's in the right state?
Good point. Yourself?
I'm not getting involved.
Worst person to ask. I don't like him.
Tell me why.
Because he's not very good. I won't say what I really feel because it wouldn't be very nice.
But if you could ask for one thing, if he could deliver on one thing, what would you hope it would be?
That's the only problem. I don't think he can deliver on anything. He's never done it in all the time he's been here. So I don't see what he can deliver on. But if he was going to deliver on anything, the first thing I think he should do is sort out the country's problems with the NHS and with the DWP, because too many people, including myself, are suffering because of it.
I think something to do with young people, I think he said was going to be a priority, improving mental health services. So I think that would be one of my top priorities.
Is there any possibility that Andy Burnham would have another referendum on Brexit?
Our research at Best for Britain shows that there is up to £93 billion per year available to the UK if they go back for membership of the EU. I think he really should be putting it into the next manifesto, but I don't think it should go in without a hell of a lot more work being done with all of the capitals around Europe, as well as corporately at the EU Commission in Brussels. And I think he's got to take the country with him on that journey. But the voters are well ahead of Labour parliamentarians on the issue of Europe. There is now a very clear and strong majority for rejoining the EU in the country. And there are, of course, a lot more people entering the electorate than 10 years ago when we voted to leave, who are younger, more highly educated, and are therefore much more likely to be pro-European. So In terms of both the electoral dividend on offer for Andy Burnham at the next election and the amount of economic growth it would get him, it would really be trying to fight an election with one hand tied behind your back if you don't put having another referendum into your manifesto.
Andy Burnham handed secret blueprint to reverse Brexit. Britain could join a new European confederation. There's a document sitting on a desk in Whitehall right now that could quietly undo the biggest political decision this country has made in half a century. No headlines shouting about it, no grand announcement in Parliament, just a plan passed hand to hand between advisers that could see Britain edge its way back into Europe's orbit without ever using the word rejoin. Welcome back to Britain Underneath, the channel that pulls back the curtain on what's really happening in British politics, the stuff that doesn't make the evening bulletin, but absolutely should. If you're new here, this is exactly the kind of story we live for, so do yourself a favour and hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to walk you through is going to raise more questions than it answers. All right, let's dive in. So here's the headline. Andy Burnham has reportedly been handed a blueprint for something called a European Confederation. Not the EU. Not quite. Something adjacent to it. A halfway house that could, in practice, unwind large chunks of Brexit, while letting politicians on both sides avoid ever saying the word reversal out loud. Let's set the scene properly. This plan is landing on desks just as preparations are underway for an October summit with EU leaders. A summit where the Prime Minister is expected to hammer out fresh agreements on energy, food exports, and easier border movement for young people. That's the official story. Technical tweaks, practical cooperation, nothing to see here. But underneath that, quite literally underneath, in the way only this channel seems to care about, there's a far bigger conversation happening, and it involves the word confederation. Now stick with me, because this next part matters. The person credited with drawing up this plan is Nick Boles, a former Conservative MP of all people, who has since crossed the floor to become a Labour advisor, helping shape preparations for Sir Keir Starmer's government. Think about that for a second. A former Tory MP designing the mechanism that could soften, reroute, or even quietly reverse the very Brexit his old party delivered. If that doesn't tell you something about how fluid British politics has become, I don't know what will. And it isn't just floating around in think tank circles either. Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor, was reportedly one of the officials who received this proposal directly. When national security advisors are being briefed on trade and constitutional architecture, you know this isn't some fringe pamphlet. This is a plan being taken seriously at the highest level of government. So what exactly is a European Confederation? According to reporting from The Telegraph, the idea is to build a wider club, one that could include the UK, Ukraine, Switzerland, Norway, and countries across the Western Balkans. A tier of nations sitting alongside the EU, rather than fully inside it. For Britain specifically, the pitch is enticing on paper. Access to the EU's single market for goods, but without having to accept freedom of movement, and without giving up the pound for the euro. In other words, some of the benefits, none of the politically toxic baggage. Sounds almost too neat, doesn't it? And that's usually the moment worth paying closest attention. Before we go further, if this is the kind of story you want more of, sharp, fast, no fluff, the subscribe button really does help this channel keep digging into things others won't touch. Consider hitting it now, because we're only just getting started. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating, though. Nick Boles himself has apparently been quite candid about the strategy behind this. He's suggested that if Britain simply goes to Brussels asking for single market access purely for its own benefit, that conversation fails before it begins. Instead, the proposal is framed as something that solves problems for Europe too, particularly around Ukraine's long-term relationship with the continent. The logic runs like this. Don't pitch it as Britain wanting favours. Pitch it as Britain offering a structural solution that happens to serve everyone, including nations still fighting for their sovereignty on Europe's eastern edge. It's clever. It's also, frankly, a little uncomfortable if you think about it too long, because buried in that framing is a serious commitment. Britain reportedly pledging armed forces and even its nuclear deterrent to help defend Europe if required. That is not a small clause tucked into a trade footnote.
That is a fundamental shift in how this country positions itself militarily and diplomatically on the world stage. And it's being discussed as part of a plan to soften Brexit, not as its own standalone national debate. Doesn't that feel like something the public should be having a much louder conversation about? Government sources, when asked, have kept things suitably vague, describing ongoing work to deepen UK-EU cooperation, which, translated from political speak, tends to mean, yes, this is happening, but we're not ready to tell you how far it goes yet. And just to make things even more interesting, there's a turf war unfolding behind the scenes. Foreign Secretary Ed Miliband has reportedly tried to take a firmer grip on these post-Brexit negotiations, even accepting an invitation to an informal meeting of foreign affairs ministers in Brussels. But by most accounts, he's lost that particular battle. Control remains firmly with the Cabinet Office, the same department that steered Keir Starmer's earlier EU reset deal. So even within government, there's a quiet contest over who gets to shape Britain's relationship with Europe going forward. Make of that what you will. If you're finding this useful, this is genuinely the moment to subscribe to Britain Underneath. Stories like this one move fast, and they rarely get the follow-up coverage they deserve elsewhere. We track them, so you don't have to dig through a dozen sources yourself. So step back for a second and ask yourself the obvious question. Is this Brexit being quietly reversed through the back door? Or is this simply pragmatic diplomacy, dressed up in careful language so nobody has to admit what's really happening? Because depending on who you ask in Westminster right now, you'll get wildly different answers. Some will tell you this is sensible, grown-up statecraft, repairing relationships damaged by years of hostility. Others will tell you this is the establishment trying to undo a democratic decision without ever putting it to the public again. Both of those arguments are being made, right now, by serious people in serious rooms. And that tension, that unresolved question of what Britain actually wants to be in relation to Europe, is exactly why we keep coming back to stories like this one. Because underneath the press releases and the diplomatic language, there's always a much bigger, much messier truth trying to get out. Before you go, take a breath, stay informed, and if this kind of political storytelling is your thing, please subscribe to Britain Underneath. It genuinely helps this channel keep producing work like this. And if you made it this far, thank you. That tells me you actually care about understanding what's happening in this country, not just skimming the headlines. This story isn't finished, not by a long way. There's more coming on this, and on plenty of other things happening just underneath the surface of British politics right now. So stick around, keep watching, and I'll see you in the next one.